So what will Donald Trump's cabinet look like? His former border chief and former chief of staff join us here in moments, plus the White House and pardons. And is RFK Jr. getting ahead of himself? That's Topping the Hill on NewsNation tonight.
You can't love your country only when you win. I also hope we can lay to rest the question about the integrity of the American electoral system.
Well, after a full day of silence, President Biden emerging today as the White House defended his decision to run, claiming he still believes he made the right choice. But tonight, the focus fully on Donald Trump and how Republicans plan to shape this town. The Senate will be under Republican control, and as of this minute, Republicans are just 5 seats away from keeping control of the House of Representatives. Our partners at Decision Desk HQ, the first to call the presidential race, currently project Republicans have an 85% shot of holding on to the lower chamber. Hello, good evening. Welcome to Washington. I'm Blake Berman. This is The Hill on NewsNation. 74 days until Inauguration Day, and there are crucial decisions for Donald Trump to make, and lots of them. And that is starting to play out at this very moment. We begin tonight with our Robert Sherman, who is reporting live once again from Mar-a-Lago. A big decision announced just moments ago, Robert.
Yeah, Blake, obviously a lot of choices need to be made from now until Inauguration Day. That day is going to be coming quickly as in terms of who's going to fill out his cabinet. But the first position slotted just moments ago, Susie Wiles, who served as the president-elect's campaign manager, will be taking over and assuming the position of White House Chief of Staff, the first female to ever do so. And in our talks with members of the Trump campaign, they said that Susie Wiles is someone who really garnered the respect of a lot of people within that campaign and as someone who they really wanted to see taking on that position. So that is the first position that has been filled out. But there's many, many more to go. And it begs the question, who else could be on that cabinet? One name that has risen to the top of conversation, Elon Musk, who you've seen on the campaign trail many, many times, floating the idea of possibly some type of role that deals with budgets and government waste. And then, of course, you have Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who you even heard the president-elect saying in his victory speech that he wanted him to be there to heal the nation and play some kind of a role in the future of his administration. Many, many more decisions still to be made here, Blake, but a big point of emphasis, they want this administration to look different than the one in 2016. Blake?
Our Robert Sherman live for us once again in Florida. Robert, thank you. Joining us now, someone who knows a thing or two about being Donald Trump's chief of staff, Mick Mulvaney, former Trump White House chief of staff, NewsNation contributor. Hello, sir.
Hello, Berman.
Big decision that Trump just made.
Yeah.
You've got the vantage point, the perspective of this. Explain for our audience what the chief of staff is, why it's so important.
That would take the entire show. I'll give you the short version.
Yep.
The chief of staff tells the president things he doesn't want to hear and does the things that the president doesn't want to do. It's the chief spear catcher for the president of the United States. It is the chief of the staff. You're charged with trying to figure out a way to make the White House work in a way to help the president be as successful as he possibly can. It is a 24-hour-a-day job. There's no question about it. You got a big target on your back with the press, with these folks on the Hill. It's the center. It's the center of all the activity in the White House.
So not an easy job, obviously.
Fun, but not easy.
How hard is it of a job specifically working for Donald Trump?
Every president is different, and even presidents within their presidency are different. You know, Donald Trump took a lot of heat from the media for having 4 chiefs of staff in his first term. Do you remember how many Barack Obama had in his first term? You made
this point the other day. It was
4. And it's just a difficult job. The average life expectancy of this job is about 15 months. I've heard nothing but really good things about Susie. I don't know her myself. I know a lot of folks in the campaign, a lot of folks in the transition, and without exception, they think she'd be really well suited to this.
There's a very small club of you all here.
About 24 of us,
in Washington, right? And I believe you all communicate, or at least some of you talk to each other. And when you do, take Susie Wiles out of the picture for a second, but if you were to talk to a chief of staff incoming, whether they're Republican or Democrat, you would tell them what?
I won't tell you what I told them. It is a very, very tight fraternity, now a sorority and a fraternity.
Right.
But I relied on former chiefs of both parties for insight from time to time, and it was extraordinarily helpful.
Mix key points for Trump's transition. Let's show it real quick as we look to, obviously, other decisions that are going to be made. Here you are, sir. Competency, familiarity with D.C., loyalty and commitment to Trump and MAGA, and central casting. Explain.
Competency, you have to know what you're doing, generally speaking. Okay? You can't be a non-lawyer and be the attorney general. You can't not understand markets and be in Treasury Secretary. Okay? It doesn't mean you have to have been in the energy department your entire life in order to run Department of Energy. You should know something about it. Rick Perry was a governor and a really good Secretary of Energy. You also have to know how to run an organization, because some of these have got 20, 30, 40,000 people in them. That's the competency I'm talking about. What was the next one?
Familiarity at D.C.
With D.C., and it's not too much, right? You can come from the outside, but you have to have a little understanding of how Washington works. It's really hard for someone to come from Wall Street to Washington. You can do it. Look at Rex Tillerson. Didn't do it very well. So Trump will be looking at people, maybe not from inside the swamp, but I get that. But folks who at least understand how this town works.
What do you mean by loyalty and central casting?
Loyalty is not the blind sort of, I'll do anything for Donald Trump. It's, are your interests aligned with the president and his agenda? Is your first loyalty to Donald Trump, or do you have divided loyalties someplace? By the way, this should come as a shock to no one. Barack Obama picked loyalists for his cabinet. You have to have a loyal cabinet because they are your most trusted advisors. And central casting, and that's Donald Trump himself, central casting, you have to sort of look the part. It counts with him.
All right. Nick Mulvaney, NewsNation contributor, former White House chief of staff.
Yeah, we did 12 minutes and 30 seconds. That's great.
Close to it. Thank you, sir.
And on day one, we will begin the largest domestic deportation operation in American history. And we're going to have the largest deportation in the history of our country. Starting at noon on Inauguration Day 2025. They're killing our people. They're killing our country. They're killing our people. We have no choice.
All right, so that, of course, part of Donald Trump's main pitch to voters this go around on day one, January 20th, 2025. After President-elect Trump is sworn into office, he's planning to implement what he says is the largest mass deportation at the southern border in this country's history. Border crossings, have skyrocketed under the Biden administration since late 2021. There have been more than 8 million encounters at the southern border. Joining us now is Chad Wolf. He is the former Department of Homeland Security acting director in the Trump administration. Chad, thanks for being with us tonight here on the Hill.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You got it. So I was looking back at the first week of Trump's presidency in 2017. He signed 5 executive orders. The third one was the wall. The fourth one was sanctuary cities. The fifth one was visas. What do you think Donald Trump's going to do in week one when it comes to immigration and the border?
Yeah. Well, I think he's going to fix what we see as a broken system that the Biden and Harris administration has broken over the last 4 years. So there's a lot of work to get done. You're talking about physical infrastructure. You mentioned the wall. There's certainly more work to be done there. But you also have got to start to institute a system that holds people accountable, that starts to remove individuals. So there's a lot of work in that first week, in that first month, that I'm sure the president and his team are going to get to work on.
The executive orders?
I know that there's been a lot of work, a lot of discussion about a lot of that. So, yeah, I think that there is an initial plan probably that they're working from. But it's not overly difficult, right? A lot of us over the last 4 years have been speaking about these solutions. They're on the America First Policy Institute website. Things that could be done today using executive order that I know I've heard the president talk about as well. So these aren't, really secretive plans. These are things that Republicans and conservatives have been advocating for some time.
What do mass deportations look like, Chad?
Well, I think it's important to remember the department actually deports individuals every single day. Now, under this administration, they have been at historic lows. And as you mentioned, the number of crossings have been at historic highs. So those two don't match up. And the system doesn't work when you have those types of different figures. And so we need to let the department get back to doing what they know to do, which is actually to remove individuals that don't have a legal right to be here and to address the mass influx of individuals that have come in over these last 3.5 and 4 years.
How does that happen, I guess, is my question.
Sure. You target individuals, you remove dangerous criminals, you have to prioritize. And ICE enforcement removal officers do this. They're able to do this each and every day. Now, they just haven't been able to do it under the Biden administration. We did it under the Trump first term, and my guess is they will continue to do this. And so you use DHS resources, but you use other resources as well.
When we talk about the border, Chad, obviously and unfortunately, part of the story is fentanyl. More than 70,000 Americans died from fentanyl overdoses last year, and unfortunately, that number is likely to go higher this year. I know you talk about the plans and the policies that are out there. Republicans look like they're going to have control of this town. What is the legislation, Chad, going to look like as you know it to give all the resources necessary at the border to stop fentanyl?
Well, I think when you talk about stopping fentanyl, you've got to put a strangle on the cartels, their money, how they're trafficking individuals over this border. We've heard about H.R. 2, which is a bill that's passed the House. My guess is that will be looked at again. There'll be a funding piece of that as well that will need to be looked at. But again, a lot of what can be done using existing authorities that President Trump used in his first term that can be used now to make sure that we are not enriching the cartels, because the more the more individuals they traffic over here, the more money they're making. Obviously, they plow that back into their illicit narcotics trade. And so you've got to strangle the cartels. You've got to lean on the government of Mexico, which I'm sure the new administration will do. So there's a variety of different things that can be done to get not only at the human trafficking, but also the fentanyl issue.
Chad, as I mentioned to our audience, you were the acting director at the Department of Homeland Security. You have a real sense of what the next Trump administration could look like. DHS oversees the United States Secret Service. In Trump world, as you know it, do they want to keep Ronald Roe in top leadership as the acting director? Or does Donald Trump likely start over and fire folks at the top of the Secret Service?
Well, again, I certainly don't talk for his campaign and haven't had any discussions.
No, I know, but you have a sense of where this is going,
Yeah, my opinion is you probably want someone from the outside, given what's occurred over these last several months, to come in. Obviously, someone with a law enforcement background to come in and see what's going on at that agency. I don't know that you can select folks from internally, but I'm sure they'll take a look at that. But I would be in favor of someone with an outside approach taking a look at what's going on there at the service.
Let me leave you with this. Morgan Ortega's former State Department spokeswoman, you know her well, said this on the show last night.
Who does he pick for DHS secretary? That person will obviously have to, as Alexandra Mayorkas has done, have to answer some very tough questions from Capitol Hill. But there's a lot of people like Chad Wolf and others who have a lot of experience.
All right, she name dropped you, Chad. Do you want your old job back?
Right. Well, look, I'm happy to serve if the president should ask. I think it's an honor to do that, not only for the president but for the country. So happy to serve if needed.
Have you been approached?
No, absolutely not. There's been no discussions about that.
All right. We'll leave it there. Chad Wolf, appreciate the time. Thanks for being with us here on the Hill. Hope to have you back, sir. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
You got it. All right. Meantime, and coming up here on the Hill, Republicans have the Senate, but the House is still up for grabs. We dive into the key races. Scott Tranter, the best in the business, the folks at DDHQ. Scott's joining us on the other side of the break with what he's seeing and when this might be called. Plus, Trump's White House win puts Bitcoin at an all-time high. What happened with that and the election? We dive into it. And RFK Jr., Robert F. Kennedy Jr., says he wants to overhaul the FDA. Is he getting ahead of himself here? Did you hear what RFK Jr. had to say? Welcome to Washington. I'm Blake Berman. This is the center of politics here in our nation's capital. We're back in 4 minutes here on the Hill. All right, welcome back here to the Hill on NewsNation. So as Republicans make preparations for a new Trump administration and Senate majority, there are still 22 House races to call. And Republicans right now are 5 wins away from keeping their majority in the House and returning Washington with a governing trifecta. With us now, Scott Tranter, the man behind the numbers, the data science director at DDHQ. Hello, Scott.
How you doing? Sorry, I'm in the war room tonight. There with you.
All good, all good. It's where you belong. There's still races to call, so we get it. I want to show the audience, though. So 213 right now, Republican, to 200 for the Democrats. 218 needed for a majority, and you guys have it at 85% chance that's happening. Let me go to 2 races that you're watching at. California and the 22nd district there. That is the incumbent David Valadao against Rudy Salas. Explain that race.
So that race has been a back and forth between Democrats and Republicans the last few cycles. It appears that it's going to be the tipping point race. That one probably, given how that vote's coming in, will be the one that could get the GOP over 218. It's also a district that Joe Biden won by over 10 points last time, and it looks like Donald Trump is doing much better there this cycle and probably will help David Valadao across the finish line.
All right, let me take you then over to Arizona real quick. In the first congressional district there, that's Congressman Schweikert, who's the incumbent. And I'm looking at this. He's got a 10,000 vote lead, 81% in. What's going on there, Tranter?
So that one was a close one. It was a toss-up. It looked like if the Democrats were going to be able to retake the House, they were going to have to Amit Shah was going to have to really have a good showing there. You know, he still may be able to put out. I think we're going to get some votes out of Maricopa tonight that is going to put potentially David Schweikert in the solid win column.
All right, I'm going to click over here to the United States Senate. Give me a second as we go over to Pennsylvania, and there's the McCormick-Casey race. McCormick up right now by about 33,000 votes, 97% in. What's happening?
So this one is razor thin. We need to see two things before we can credibly call this race. We need to see some more votes out of Cambria County, which David McCormick will probably win, but we got to see what margin. And we need the state of Pennsylvania to tell us how many provisional ballots are left so that we can understand whether or not there's a margin enough for Bob Casey to come back. Doesn't look likely, but we need to count everything.
All right, real quick, Arizona. That's obviously the Ruben Gallego-Kerry Lake race.
Yeah. Kerry Lake has a small, narrow path back to victory, but it's looking really good for Ruben Gallego. We just need Arizona to count a little faster. So we might have enough votes tonight or tomorrow if one ends up.
Scott Tranter deserves his weekend, too, so count those votes faster out there. Scott Tranter, the man behind the numbers, DDHQ. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
You got it. All right, so as President Biden used a national address today to try to reassure Democrats that there is a path ahead, the press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, today was asked about a potential pardon for the president's son. Watch.
Does the president have any intention of pardoning him?
We've been asked that question multiple times. Our answer stands, which is no.
Joining me now, Linda Tran, former senior advisor to the Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, Kurt Bardella, NewsNation contributor, Democratic strategist as well. Hello to you both. Nice to have you in. You're both parents.
Yes.
No parent believes that he's not going to.
Not together, though.
Not together. Separate.
We need to clarify.
Every parent does not believe a word that's coming out of the White House there.
I continue to take them at their word until the moment they change their minds.
Kurt?
I can't imagine a universe in which Joe Biden walks out of that White House and doesn't make sure that his son's taken care of.
You think Donald Trump comes at some point in the upcoming weeks and says, I'm going to commute his sentence and sort of takes the thunder away?
That would be a brilliant political move for all the conversation about lawfare that we've seen from Trump. Doing that and making the point that just as they went after me and my family, and they did the same thing here, and we're going to get rid of it altogether.
All right. I walk in, I see Linda. I'm like, hey, how you doing? You're normally a bright spot. You had head down when I saw you earlier today. Where are you right now with the Democratic Party?
I'm cycling through the many stages of grief, which I think
What stage are you at?
You know, I think I'm just a little bit numb, if I'm being honest. Yeah.
Where does your party go from here?
Well, I think that we clearly need to do some serious self-reflection. Part of what's been bothering me is that there are a lot of hot takes happening right now, and I think that we need to really take a close look at all of the numbers. They're not all in yet, and we need to have some deep conversations at every level of the party and within all of the states to get a better sense of what actually happened, because I don't think anybody really knows.
I know what happened.
Okay, tell me.
If you were to go to a country music concert or a WWE live event, and look at that audience and say any one of the Democratic Party's lines, rhetoric, talking points, show them an ad, it would not resonate with those people at all. If you are going to win elections and win national elections in this day and age, you have to have a message that is compelling to that audience in some way, and we don't have that.
What about this from Dave Portnoy of Barstool Sports? If we have the soundbite, play it.
This moral superiority complex they have, this arrogance they have, it's not working. It's time to wake up and see that. You're alienating half the country.
Is he right there? I know you say you still want to see the votes come in. You're shaking your head. You think that's spot on?
Yeah, and I said on election night to Connell, one of the big blind spots for Democrats is this feeling that if you disagree with me, you are racist or sexist or misogynistic. If you are a Trump supporter, we will label you as those things. You are never going to get people to see the world your way if you start the conversation with that type of mentality.
I'll give you the last word.
I mean, I hear what you're saying, but I don't think it's a new allegation to levy against the Democratic Party that somehow we are elitist and we speak to only a certain category of people. I think under this administration, with this president, it's a little bit tougher of an argument to make when he has literally spent months and months fighting for working people out there on the picket lines.
And Democrats say that. Joe Biden is the most labor-friendly, union-friendly president we've ever had, and I get that. But saying it doesn't mean that people actually feel that and doesn't make it true. And the numbers that we have seen so far, where Democrats have lost with every demographic in every state, we have lost ground, it kind of says that's the case.
Hang around. Still much more ahead here on the Hill. Crypto-friendly candidates won this election cycle big. I've been talking about this for a while. Bardella knows. He's laughing, but he knows I've been talking about it. We talked to the former Pennsylvania Senator Pat Toomey on the other side of the break. What's going on there? And Federal Reserve Chairman Jay Powell making a post-election interest rate cut. What it means for your wallet. The Hill returns. Welcome back here to the Hill on NewsNation. As you know, during the election, voters made it clear that the biggest issue for them was the economy and inflation. Today, the Federal Reserve taking action, cutting interest rates by a 0.25 percentage point in an effort to support economic expansion. Really, inflation, they say, is now not at a level of what it once was. The Fed chair, Jay Powell, who was appointed by Donald Trump but has routinely criticized, at least in private, Jay Powell, Powell was, about his future.
Some of the president-elect's advisors have suggested that you should resign. If he asked you to leave, would you go?
No.
Can you follow up on, do you think that legally you're not required to leave?
No.
Powell from earlier today. Meantime, the cryptocurrency Bitcoin jumping 10% just about since Tuesday, now hitting an all-time high. One Bitcoin, depending on the moment, whenever you look at it, worth somewhere in the neighborhood of $75,000, $76,000. It's believed that over 90 million Americans own some form of cryptocurrency in one way or another, and Trump actively courted that voter group, or at least that group, during the election. On top of that, crypto super PACs were among the biggest players in the 2024 election cycle. Get this, at least as we know it right now, spending over $130 million. The top race for them in terms of spending, Bernie Moreno, who was successful in ousting the Democrat, long-term Democrat, Sherrod Brown in Ohio. He was a leading critic of the crypto space. All five, by the way, of the top candidates supported by the crypto community either won or are currently leading in their races. Our next guest, you probably know him as the former ranking member of the Senate Banking Committee, former senator from the state of Pennsylvania, Pat Toomey, joining us live here on the Hill. Senator, thanks for being with us. Appreciate the time. You're a proponent of crypto. You got it. How badly did Washington misjudge this? I was talking about it for a while, saying this is a big voting bloc. They're spending a lot of money, and it seems like they were incredibly successul.
I'll tell you what, obviously it was a huge night for Republicans, but it was a huge night for crypto also. Crypto won big. The bottom line is now we clearly have unambiguously pro-crypto majorities in both the House and the Senate. It's bipartisan. The organization, both Fair Shake, the Super PAC, but also Stand With Crypto and other grassroots organizations really, really brought the fight to this election cycle. As you pointed out in opening up on this, defeating anti-crypto folks like Sherrod Brown, defeating them with pro-crypto people, it's a big change, and no one is going to fail to take notice.
Donald Trump was campaigning on this. Here he was in a Bitcoin bar in New York during the cycle. Watch.
Everybody that's a crypto guy, crypto maniac, as I call them, because they really are.
We're a little bit wild, right? Yeah, we're a little wild.
Whether it's Bitcoin, but crypto, get out and vote, because if you vote, we cannot lose. It's the beginning of a new era, actually.
All right, so here's what he's promising. Launching a strategic national cryptocurrency stockpile, firing Gary Gensler. That'll happen. Gensler's, he's gone. All future Bitcoin, he says, will be mined in America. Not sure how that happens. But what about this idea of a stockpile? I mean, obviously, there's the SPRO, the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. And is there going to be something here with crypto? How does that work?
Yeah, so that's what the president has said. We haven't seen details about what does that look like. We also have effectively a strategic reserve of gold, and that makes a lot of sense. It serves as a sort of a backstop to the currency. God forbid that we need that, but we would have a non-dollar denominated, non-fiat currency asset that could be sold if it were necessary. And one could imagine that Bitcoin could play a similar role. I think we want to be careful how many strategic reserves we have. We've seen the current administration manipulating the oil reserve for political purposes, but it's an interesting idea.
Here's your old colleague, Senator Cynthia Lummis. We're going to be building a strategic Bitcoin reserve. Her idea is to buy 1 million. There will be about 21 million in circulation when all is said and done. Right. It's getting close to that number at this point in time. As you know, if you do some just back of the envelope math, Senator, that'd be about $75 billion in current terms. What would you say to folks who say, wait a minute, we got a $35 trillion debt. Should we be spending on this and doing this?
Yeah. Look, I mean, it's a fair consideration. I think we should have a debate about this. Why would we do it? What would the purpose be? Is it a reserve to defend the dollar should that day come, God forbid? What's the real intent? But I think we should have that conversation. Bitcoin certainly has many of the properties that has made gold a strategic reserve for a long time. So it's worth having the conversation.
Pat Toomey, thank you for being with us here on the Hill. Appreciate the time, sir.
Thanks for having me.
You got it. All right. Join me once again, Mick Mulvaney, former Trump White House Chief of Staff, NewsNation contributor. All right, Mulvaney.
You're going to do crypto again, aren't you?
I looked it up. So you were the first person to launch the blockchain caucus back in September of 2016. I went back to the date. I was the first person to ask the White House about Bitcoin on November 30th, 2017. I had folks in the White House refer to me as Bitcoin because I asked that question.
We still call you that backstage.
I got laughed at in the White House, but
we still laugh at you backstage.
Yeah, I know you do. Donald Trump wholly embraced this. There's 90 million folks who own the thing. Where does it go? Or crypto, at least in some form.
Listen, it's a wonderful tool. It is. It's a lot like gold, and Pat Toomey is right. It's not going to be a strategic reserve for Bitcoin. There's not enough of it. I think our gold reserves are $500 billion in an economy that's $22 trillion. That's not what it is. It is a good investment source. It's a good source of maintaining wealth, of preserving wealth, and growing wealth. It's a wonderful asset class, but it's not the next dollar, and it's certainly not the next gold.
He was right, though, not to ignore this.
Correct. Absolutely right. And he was against it in the first term. That was clearly the position on it has evolved, as it has for a lot of people as they understand and come to learn what crypto is. By the way, it's not crypto, and it's not currency. It's neither of those things. That's why we didn't call it the cryptocurrency caucus. We called it the blockchain caucus, because it's the technology that underlies crypto as blockchain, which is really that is the real story here.
They're here to stay, and they're going to play a big deal in Washington in elections to come. All right. Meantime, Donald Trump has promised many times over his campaign to drill, baby, drill.
To rapidly reduce inflation, I will end Kamala's war on American energy, and we will drill, baby, drill. We're going to drill, baby, drill.
But lost in a bit of the news in this election cycle just yesterday, the Biden administration taking steps to minimize drilling in Alaska. Now, I'll take you back in 2017, part of the Trump tax cuts. There was a requirement for the government in the law to auction off drilling rights in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, otherwise known as ANWR. When President Biden won, his administration suspended those leases. Now they will hold a final sale mandated by law, but will only auction off, or at least potentially sell off, 400,000 acres, the smallest amount of land possible under that law. What does Donald Trump do here? He was able to get this in the tax law. It was kind of, I don't want to say secretive, but when the law came out, he bragged about it.
And he should have.
And now what's he going to do?
Because Republicans had tried to get this for 40 years. And it was a big part of the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, and he was right to take credit for it. Look, here's how it works in Washington, is that when one administration does something, Okay. It takes roughly the same amount of time for the next administration to undo that.
Okay.
Right? You pass a law, you have to pass a law to fix it. You pass a reg, you have to pass a reg to undo it.
Okay.
You simply do one of these executive orders, which is what Biden is doing. You can undo that or change that with an executive order. So we'll wait and see. Trump is going to make energy a priority. He said that. It's not going to surprise anybody. So if there's a way for them to open up more of Alaska under the current law, they're absolutely positively going to do it.
The second executive order that Donald Trump signed in 2017, number one was Affordable Care Act.
Yep.
3, 4, and 5 were basically immigration. Number 2 was involving energy. We'll see.
And it was a great idea, by the way. We're going to take the money the additional money we were going to generate from those leases on public lands and pour that money back into the National Park Service, which is a really, really good use.
Democrats, of course, have environmental concerns and the like, and thus the back and forth.
Absolutely.
Hang around. Mick, thank you. Coming up here on the Hill, what about RFK Jr. And comments that he made? There's lots of conversation, or at least stories about what RFK Jr. said about vaccines and what he would do. And what caught my attention was another part of the soundbite, something else. I'll play it for you on the other side. Plus, the California governor, Gavin Newsom, calls a special session to counter Trump's return to the White House, what he's saying as well. Full panel on the other side of the break when The Hill on NewsNation returns.
This is the biggest call of the night. Former President Donald Trump will be our next president.
Americans made their choice.
This is a moment for patriotic grace for Republicans.
And they found a new home for news. NewsNation.
This is independent. Our executives, unlike the other cable networks, do not have any influence.
No one has been close to NewsNation because of DDHQ.
News with respect for all Americans. That's NewsNation. News for all America.
All right, welcome back here to The Hill on NewsNation. I'm Blake Berman. Just 2 days after Donald Trump's victory, the California governor, Gavin Newsom, is already going on the offensive. He's calling for an emergency and special legislative session. Newsom, writing in a social media post, quote, "California is ready to fight." He goes on to say, whether it be our fundamental civil rights, reproductive freedom, or climate action, we refuse to turn back the clock and allow our values and laws to be attacked. What's Newsom up to here? Full panel here with me now. Linda Tran is former senior advisor to the Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. I've been talking to Scott Trainer a lot. She's Linda Tran. Mick Mulvaney, you know him. Denise Gitsom, NewsNation contributor. Kurt Bardella, NewsNation contributor as well. Hello to you all. Nice to have you all in. The two Californians, Let's start here. What's Newsom up to?
He is running for president of the United States of America.
Starts now. He was the first one to unofficially announce.
There is a vacancy for leader of the Democratic Party, and Gavin Newsom is saying, pick me.
You know what I love about this is suddenly he's become like a full-on Sandra Day O'Connor, like 10th Amendment Federalist. Like he's all about federalism. He's like, get your federal laws off of California. Let's see. And I've never heard a Democrat say that for real. So sweet.
I'm from the South, and every time we talk about states' rights, they tell me I'm racist.
I know,
but not racist.
Because it's Gavin.
You change it to sexist now.
Gavin, it's Gavin. It only counts. It only counts.
Gavin Newsom is giving the resistance a home, much as California was in 2016. That's what he's doing.
Has Gavin seen the losses the losses to Democrats? I mean, in California, there were more of a shift to right in California. 12 points. So clearly, he's not reading the tea leaves.
You say he's running for president.
Absolutely, he is.
Is that the way the Democratic Party needs to go? Another Democrat from California?
Absolutely not. Okay. That is the last thing the Democratic Party needs right now. Again, when we talked about this in the last segment, when you're losing the middle of America, literally, in the Electoral College and in the vote, picking anyone from California to lead your party out of that wilderness is a recipe for losing.
Absolutely.
You need Mike Dukakis. Is he still alive?
Who?
Good Massachusetts liberal.
No.
Well, that's right.
He's too young.
Does anybody? Am I the only one who remembers Mike Dukakis?
I remember Mike Dukakis. That was maybe the first presidential election that I recall.
Thank you.
Is he the guy that lost 49 states to Reagan?
Indeed.
No, he lost to Bush the first.
Or Bush? See, I don't even know.
All right, meantime, moving on here. We're off of Dukakis. Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, we know they'll be here in Washington, leading the country in 74 days. But as Robert F. Kennedy Jr., celebrating a bit early. In an interview with MSNBC, the former presidential candidate turned Trump supporter repeatedly mentioned what he is going to do.
I'm not going to take away anybody's vaccines. I've never been anti-vaccine. I'm going to make sure scientific safety studies and efficacies are out there, and people can make individual assessments about whether that product is going to be good for them.
In a 20-second soundbite there, I heard Robert F. Kennedy Jr. say "I" 3 times. I know Donald Trump's the president, and going to be the president. I know J.D. Vance is going to be the vice president. And what stood out to me, a lot of the headlines is what he said about vaccines, and there's a real conversation to have there. But it stood out to me. I know when I ran it by you, it stood out to you. Donald Trump is the star. He's the main actor. He's the executive producer and everything in between. And once you start talking about I wonder if that catches his attention.
He's also the president. I mean, he just got, 80 million votes or whatever it is. Yes, there's only room for one ego in an administration, and it is the president. And he or she has earned that right. So, yes, either Kennedy's going to figure that out, or I think his tenure might be fairly short.
He will not figure that out. Bob, it is, and again, I know Bobby, and I'm telling you, it is all about Bobby all the time. And like I said, he said the word "I" 3 times.
That was just one clip,
in 20 seconds, by the way. And last time I checked, he's also not the White House chief of staff. He has anointed himself and given himself authority that no one else has yet. And there's going to be a conflict at some point when he gets too far out ahead of where the president is. It will come back and bite him.
But he has such a following amongst the functional health specialists. I mean, there are mothers there's especially in the sort of women that were in the Trump movement and Maha movement, this Make America Healthy Again. I can't tell you how many of my friends, and this is on both sides of the aisles, are so tired of big pharma dictating what happens in our healthcare system and sick and tired of the constant medication and the chronic conditions that are plaguing their children. They're desperate. He is their savior.
Steve Bannon flew too close to the sun. And
so I was going to say, I can't imagine that this is going to be a great relationship if it starts out like that.
Yeah, that's what Mick said, too.
This either he'll learn or he'll leave. I mean, that's the way it works. Yeah. That's the right way it's supposed to be. The president is the president.
You said the other day you don't think he would be Senate confirmed.
Yeah, I just
What's his role in a Trump administration? What is RFK Jr.'s role? Trump has talked about him with health, as Denise just laid out some of the issues as he views it. What's his?
It's a non-Senate confirmed position. It's a senior advisor. It's a czar, to overuse an overused word, but it can't be a Senate confirmed position because the confirmation process would be a circus, and Donald Trump doesn't want that.
Oh, I totally agree. I mean, that's why we're watching the Senate numbers so closely, right? Because that will obviously ease the way in terms of Senate confirmations for most of the major roles. But that guy in particular is going to have a tough.
There's also going to be a beltway sideshow in a courtroom involving 2 very high-profile reporters that Bobby's going to play a central role in, whether he likes it or not. The White House is not going to deal with that.
All right. Meantime, what happens when you take off your football helmet and put on a MAGA hat? The San Francisco 49ers star defensive end, Nick Bosa, is waiting to find out. He video bombed a post-game interview with his teammates wearing a hat that had the Make America Great Again logo. Now, the NFL, if you're wondering why this is a thing, the NFL has lots of rules on the field, off it, like rule after rule after rule. And they have a rule against players displaying political messages on game days. Now, Bosa says he still hasn't been fined by the National Football League, but even if he is, he said, quote, "It was well worth it."
Listen, Niners and political controversy. All I think about is Cap, right? As a Niner fan, I think, man, Cap went after it with kneeling or sitting first and then
Colin
kneeling.
Kaepernick, you're referring to.
Yeah, and so if the NFL gave him a pass, and they actually supported him, as did the Niners, how hypocritical. I mean, the hypocrisy is outrageous for them to go after him.
No, because in 2018, the NFL changed the rules and made that if you kneel during the national anthem, you get fined.
Okay, but they gave him 2 years.
But I'm saying, that's been the rule since 2018. If you're okay with people being fined for taking a knee during the national anthem, you have to be okay with a fine for wearing the hat.
I'm with Kurt on this one. The rules are the rules. I mean, it's a private organization. It's a private company. You play by the rules, you're fine. I think his attitude about it is right.
He's fine.
It's worth it for me. I think that's great, but you're right. If you know what the rules are, you got to play by the rules.
And, I mean, I think it makes sense that the NFL would not want to inject politics into the sport.
They learned how that works.
They want to sell tickets. They want people to be excited and root no matter what.
All right. Thank y'all. Appreciate it. Good to see you, too. Still to come here on the Hill, the world-famous golfer Rory McIlroy making a statement about what Donald Trump's return to the White House could mean for professional golf. A couple amateurs discuss it on the other side of the break. Leland Vittert, host of On Balance, is next. Stay with us. All right, welcome back here to the Hill on NewsNation. So can President-elect Donald Trump broker a deal in the golf world. Trump recently said he could help fix the divide between the PGA Tour and LIV Golf in 15 minutes. And now the pro golfer, Rory McIlroy, the superstar, says he agrees. McIlroy noting that the former president has a, quote, great relationship with Saudi Arabia, adding, quote, he's got Elon Musk, who I think is the smartest man in the world. We might be able to do something if we can get Musk involved, too. Host of On Balance, fellow golf aficionado, Leland Vitter, joins me live. Leland, I should note real quick, Nexstar Media Group, the owner of NewsNation, also a majority owner of the CW Network, which is currently airing LIV golf tournaments. All right, what about it? We know Trump loves golf. This has been a big thing in the golf world. There have been LIV events at his clubs.
LIV events at his clubs. And Donald Trump loves nothing more than the pageantry of a show, right? We have a picture here of him at a football game. He went to the Army-Navy game as president-elect, went to a bunch of college football games, and now he is running for president. There's the 250th American birthday celebration that he will be president for. There's the Olympics he will be president for. So these are all events that he would love nothing more than to participate in. What was it? I think his acceptance speech, his victory speech, was the first ever victory speech where the U.S. Open champ was invited out.
I was watching it, right? And I'm like, did he just bring up Bryson DeChambeau? And there it was with Trump, love him or hate him. Man, you know this, I know this. You never know what you're going to get.
That's why you got to watch, right? In the 1980s, Donald Trump gave an interview to Playboy magazine. To be clear, Mom, who was watching, I was not reading Playboy magazine in the 1980s. I was 8 years old. But he gave it an interview. And in the interview, he said it's called The Trump Show. And it is sold out everywhere.
Yep.
By the way, there may be, I don't know if there's hope for the country, but this does prove there's hope for the Republican Party. Somehow, Donald Trump has gotten Jeb Bush to praise something he did. Pretty amazing to bring Jeb Bush coming together. There you go.
The new hire, to your point, it's what we were just talking about with RFK Jr. as he keeps saying, I. It's the Trump show.